This is Michael Popak, Legal AF. Donald Trump's sentencing and the hearing and the inputs for Judge Merchan to mete out sentence is not the same thing as his trial. And now that Donald Trump is a convicted felon, all of that information, all of those data points that were developed during the trial, all of the acting out by Donald Trump, all of the contempt, all of the attempts to undermine the justice system, all the attempts to go after Judge Merchan, his daughter, staff members, the prosecutors, and the rest, although they couldn't be considered by the jury, with Judge Merchan acting as a gatekeeper to make sure that justice was done and was not undermined by outside influences that could prejudice the jury, they're now all fair game in the sentencing of Donald Trump. That's something he never understood. And now having put the prosecutors to their proof and made them try this case and expend resources over more than 2 years, right? Hundreds and hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to prosecute Donald Trump, to develop the evidence, to put on 23 witnesses, to spend weeks in trial. Now that, combined with all of Donald Trump's contumacious conduct, all of his acting out, all of his contempt, all of his prior bad acts come into sentencing. Yes, the sentence has to match the crime. Yes, the sentence meted out has to be symmetrical, right, as a proper punishment given the crime. But that doesn't mean the judge, in taking the inputs from the probation department and from the prosecutor's office, and yes, from Donald Trump's lawyers himself, doesn't observe all of the conduct inside and outside of the courtroom during this trial. Every time Donald Trump went in front of that bicycle rack during a break in the trial, before the trial, or after the trial, or had one of his surrogates do it, the court was listening. The court was watching, and the prosecutors are putting that all together in their sentencing memorandum. And the judge will too. All the times that Donald Trump acted out inappropriately, in violation of the gag order, in violation of the second gag order, are data points, is conduct that the judge can take into effect when he's sentencing. And as my colleague, Karen Friedman-Agnifilo, in Huffington Post just recently said in an interview, having been the #2 prosecutor in the Manhattan DA's office herself, Donald Trump should not be given any credit whatsoever, quite the opposite, for making the prosecutor put on their case. You want a lighter sentence, you cut a deal early. You want a lighter sentence, you cut a deal probably for misdemeanor early on at the top of the case, and you don't make the prosecutors have to put on 23 witnesses and go have all the other issues that came up and have to put on thousands of pieces of evidence in front of Judge Merchan. You cut a deal, the deal that we knew he was never going to cut because his ego wouldn't allow it. And he wanted to use the prosecution of Donald Trump to argue for the persecution of Donald Trump, for some of his followers of his cult that believe he's literally Jesus Christ. And so Donald Trump never would cut that deal. That's the only way you can avoid having the book thrown at you. Now, I get it that Judge Merchan has a dilemma. He's on the horns of a dilemma. He has a candidate for office. He has somebody that, when they committed the crimes for which he was convicted, was not president yet, but is running for the office now. And so he has to balance, to a certain degree, and there's ways to do that, what kind of sentence he's going to mete out to Donald Trump, and the timing of it, and whether he lets him stay out after sentencing to allow for an appeal, which I think is likely. Even if he decides, Judge Merchan, that to send the proper message and to send the right sentence, given the history of other people like Donald Trump who have violated the laws, the crimes that he committed, the business record fraud in furtherance of a second crime, in this case, election fraud, in this case, internal revenue fraud or tax fraud. There are only about 8 or 10% that end up going to jail, but they get sentences, especially when there's 34 counts and they're trying to steal the election, which has to weigh on the minds of the judge. It just has to weigh on the minds of the judge. So he may have a component of this sentence be incarceration, which means he's sending the Secret Service to jail also, because they have to follow him by law wherever Donald Trump goes. But so be it. I think it's a combination of home confinement, some sort of actual sentence in incarceration, combined with home confinement, combined with community service, combined with some sort of low fine to at least help to compensate the prosecutors for all the time and expense they've had to do on behalf of the people of the state of New York. Having done that, the way the judge kind of ameliorates this bizarre issue of a former president running for president, having been convicted for crimes before he was president, he can do it with timing. He can suspend the sentence to allow for an appeal, much like Judge Nichols did when he sentenced Steve Bannon to 4 months, but gave him that year and a half to work his appeal through a normal process before now he has to report in July, right around the time of Donald Trump's sentencing. As Donald Trump is going in, so to speak, or as Steve Bannon's going in, he's going to pass Donald Trump. And so Judge Nichols, the federal judge, gave Bannon time to go do his appeal and then sent him for sentencing. That's why it's a year and a half later, we're talking about Steve Bannon now going into prison off his 4-month sentence from 18 months ago. Could do a similar thing here with Judge Merchan. It's hot outside, and your nighttime bedroom temperature has a huge impact on your sleep quality. If you wake up too hot or too cold, I highly recommend you check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Using silver-infused fabrics inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, no matter the weather. So you get better sleep every night. These sheets are infused with silver that prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresh 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands, and feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Bacteria can clog your pores, causing breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo code LegalAF at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf and use the code LegalAF to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/legalaf to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. So I would look for this package of prison time, jail time, confinement, home confinement, all of that, delayed until an appeal works its way through while Donald Trump is out on either bond or otherwise, personal recognizance. And that would get over the November hump. Donald Trump loses. Appeal is over. Let's say a year from now, Donald Trump starts that prison sentence, right? Or he could say, I'm not going to delay it for the appeal because, you kind of got to go in, but I'm going to delay it until after the election. He could do that as well. Remember, even after the election, Donald Trump still has Secret Service protection, meaning that Judge Merchan has to think about sending the Secret Service to jail along with Donald Trump. My gut feeling is that it's going to be this harsh sentence because Donald Trump did not cooperate and take an earlier deal. Now, look, there was no reporting that there was a deal offered, but certainly if the defense led by Todd Blanche and Susan Necheles for Donald Trump, maybe Alina Habba at some point, had gone to the prosecutors and say, look, let's cut a deal here. Let's cut a deal here on a misdemeanor. Forget the 34 counts. He'll plead guilty to 1 count misdemeanor, false business records, give him probation. I'm not saying that would have worked, but there was more likely a chance of that occurring 2 years ago than now. Now, every defendant that makes the prosecutors go through the process gets sentenced by showing, with recognition that they haven't shown any remorse, which Donald Trump, from a DNA genetic standpoint, can't show remorse. And that's, again, another factor for Judge Merchan, along with the acting out, along with the contempt, along with the bad conduct inside and outside the courtroom. Now is the time. The jury couldn't consider it, but the judge can. And that's the purpose of this hot take, to tell you what I think. And because of the length of the sentence, I don't think we'll be up to a year. I think we'll be something shorter than that, just given the precedent of other people. Even though the victim here is the American people, which I think makes this a special case for 34 counts. The 34 counts are sort of made up of like one conspiracy, and the 34 counts are like checks and general ledgers and invoices from Michael Cohen. So it's really one conspiracy. We talk about it as 34 criminal convictions because it is felony convictions, but it really arises out of one major dominant conspiracy. And I think that'll weigh on the judge's mind too. But so I think there's going to be this package. I think it's going to be less than a year, and the appellate process is longer than the amount of time I think the judge is going to award, which leads me to believe that the judge, taking a page out of what other judges have done in similar matters like Steve Bannon, contempt of Congress, is going to find that he's going to delay the start of the sentence until after the appellate process, which in New York could be a year or 18 months in total. Could be a little bit shorter. But it's a 2025 event. It's not a 2024 event, which does solve for another problem, right? It kills two birds with one stone. I hate that phrase, but it is accurate and apropos here. It gets us over the hump of the election and doesn't appear to be election interference, although to Donald Trump and his leaders and his followers, everything's election interference, right? Instead of just being that the American people are entitled to know whether they're voting for a convicted felon, which they do know now in New York, and what his sentence is before they go in and pull the switch in the ballot, in the election booth, right? And in voting. Just like we're entitled to know in DC, the election interference case, or in Georgia, or in the Mar-a-Lago case, same thing. But it looks like at the present rate, we're only going to know about this case as a fact to incorporate into our election decision, and that's okay. But the sentencing is what I talked about. I think it's a package under a year, combined with some other components that will be suspended until and stayed until an appeal process wends its way. But that he won't hold back, Judge Merchan, and will incorporate all of these other factors that I've talked about, all these other bad conduct by Donald Trump and his lawyers, mainly Donald Trump, in rendering this decision, giving him no credit for remorse, for acceptance of responsibility, or for resolving this through a plea bargain process prior to a trial, and forcing the prosecutors to be put to their proof. I'll continue to follow what really happens. We got a filing brief coming up by the Trump side about their sentencing recommendations. You know that's going to be no sentence at all, deferred, no, not even probation, not even community service. It's going to be that. Then the prosecutors are going to file their brief right before the July 11th sentencing, later in June. And then we're going to look at all of it, and then we're going to follow that July 11th hearing, try to get some people inside the room to actually hear the arguments being made before Judge Merchan. And on that day, and not after that day, on that day from the bench, Judge Merchan will read his sentencing of Donald Trump and will enter judgment of conviction against him, making him officially a convicted felon. On that day, July 11th. Circle it on your calendar. Come back to the MeidasTouch network and this YouTube channel. We're building this network with our bare hands with your help. We have no outside investors, right? We don't censor. There's no censored content. Nobody tells me what to say on this podcast or on this hot take, right? We don't blow smoke or sunshine. Come join us on Legal AF on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You sort of understand why we called it Legal AF 4 years ago in anticipation of these types of cases. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Time, YouTube, or on audio podcast platforms of your choice. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popak reporting. Heary. Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.